Thank you, Brianna, our illustrious producer for Solo Arts Heal. And thanks to the Marstream for this outstanding community service broadcast platform, which benefits communities throughout the Bay Area and worldwide. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Schickley, and welcome to Solo Arts Heal. Tonight, we feature renowned lawyer, consumer advocate, activist, and storyteller Samuel A. Simon, an excerpt of whose new show, Dementia Man, we'll see tonight. It's fair to say that Sam is a man of action. And Solo Arts Heal was born from action through the art of storytelling and performance at the intersection of education and advocacy about health and healing. From the start, we've worked in solidarity with our core artist collective, and here on the Marstream, presenting excerpts of shows that embrace the healing power of the arts over a wide range of mental, emotional, and physical challenges, and with talkbacks that offer insights and resources for our audiences, which includes the health and healing of our Mother Earth, how we treat one another, and how we treat the planet is all connected. Tonight, Sam tells his story of an existential journey through his own neurocognitive disability, early stage Alzheimer's disease with mild cognitive impairment, written and performed by the actor and playwright Samuel A. Simon. There are other Sam Simons out there, but there's only one who describes his theatrical work as his fourth age, coming to it after a career as a prominent member of America's consumer movement. Trained as a lawyer, he was an original member of Ralph Nader's first legal advocacy group in Washington, D.C. in 1970, his leadership profiled in the New York Times, after which he began his own consulting firm and became a regular in the national news, appearing on programs such as Face the Nation, The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS Morning News, and The Oprah Winfrey Show. In 2008, Sam began his third age, devoting himself to full-time theatrical and writing work. His first play, The Actual Dance, Love's Ultimate Journey Through Breast Cancer, which we've featured on this show, debuted in 2013 as the best original production in the Northern Virginia One Act Festival, a show he's been touring with over 100 performances since. In 2021, a memoir based on the play was published and awarded a bronze medal by the Independent Publishers Association. Dementia Man, An Existential Journey had its premiere showcase January 2023 in New York at the Association of Performing Arts Professionals, APAP, conference, and it will premiere at the Washington, D.C. Capitol Fringe in July 2023. What we're about to see is a 20-minute excerpt of Dementia Man. Dramaturg is Gabrielle Maisel, director is Thadd McQuade. The performance will be followed by a talkback with renowned Broadway actor Melinda Buckley, whose show Mother and Me also addresses cognitive issues. In this theatrical excerpt, Sam takes the stage as a man facing his own anticipated cognitive decline and asks the hard questions of what to do next in the face of what he calls an existential journey. Please join me now in welcoming Samuel A. Simon in Dementia Man.
Susan and I have traveled all the way to Switzerland. We have to be on the same page. Hell, we talked about it. We saw a counselor. We bought airplane tickets, paid the outrageous fee for this place. And we got on the airplane and flew all the way across the Atlantic to friggin' Switzerland. Now Susan tells me that I don't have to do this. You can still change your mind, Sam. I love you. If you let me choose, I choose to keep you however you are. You will never be a lesser person to me. Please, please, let's just go home. Make the best of whatever time you have left. She says that she loves me and that I will always be Sam to her. look, if I don't take this drink, if I don't end it all now, what's going to happen? Does the present Sam just vanish, go away, become a different person, a different Sam? Or just a confused, confounded, agitated, perhaps even dangerous creature? Have you ever driven the wrong way down a one-way street? The first time for me was in 2016. It scared the shit out of me. How the hell did that happen? Now, I basically begin to write it off. Like, look, you've probably done it yourself. Anybody can do that once, right? But then a few months later, I was having lunch Friday afternoon. Every Friday, same place, about a mile from my home, having lunch with my friend. We finish lunch. I get out, get in my car, turn into the parking lot, out of the parking lot onto the main road. And all of a sudden, I lose cognitive awareness. And now I'm floating down the road in this moving machine. Street signs are floating in the air, almost dancing. The building signs are also moving around. The 7-Eleven store sign is sitting on the hood of my car right in front of my windshield. And then somehow, as I'm floating down the street, I make out a turn lane. And I turn right, pull the car over, close my eyes, take a breath, and drive very slowly home. And I don't tell anyone about that. But what really scares me, that's not bad enough. What really scares me is the appearance one day of an infinite black wall in the middle of my head. A thick, liquid-like, infinite wall, the entire right side of my brain. The wall is packed with swirling, liquid-like black circles down out into infinity. Much like deep space. And hiding behind this black, infinite wall is everything I want to know. The names of people, the places, my calendars, my appointments, the directions, what happened yesterday. And I look and I reach and I can't get past that black wall. And now I am really scared. And I know I need help. So I make an appointment with my internist. Now, he's heard me complain recently about my memory, but he seems to write that off as just, normal aging, an old guy complaining, but maybe a small dose of mild depression. But when I tell him about the infinite black wall, he immediately makes an appointment for me with the neurology practice of Dr. Howard. Now, it takes a little while. This is going to be a theme. It takes a little while to get into see Dr. Howard. When I do, and I tell him about the infinite black wall, he immediately schedules me for every test, electronic test for the brain known to human beings. He sets up for a MRI, a sleep study, and the EEG studies up the gazoo. And then the gold standard of cognitive testing, a neuropsychological test takes 5 hours long. Now, as you can imagine, it takes months to get through these tests. And with every test, I become more and more anxious. Finally, I call, the phone rings, it's a neuropsychologist, my test results are in. Would you like to have me send them to Dr. Howard, Sam, or would you like to come in and I'd be glad to give them to you? Well, by now, I want my test results right now, so I go in to see the neuropsychologist. Sit down and he hands me this 10-page thick report full of medical jargon, and he points me to the last page and he says, I have MCI, I am mildly cognitively impaired. Now, I have no friggin' idea what that means, but I am actually delighted. And as I leave and I walk outside, I pump my fist. Yes, there is something wrong with me. I am not normal. Oh, I was delighted. And I can't wait now to get back to Dr. Howard's office to get a diagnosis. What's causing the mild cognitive impairment? A treatment plan, and some idea of how long it's going to take to get well. Now, Susan insists on joining me this time for this visit. We arrive at Dr. Howard's office. We're taken put into a treatment room, and we wait. And we wait. Now, Dr. Howard sort of bustles in. He's got the MRI film on his hands, and he puts it on that machine that has the light behind it to show it to me. He seems to be very positive. He tells us that, yes, I've seen you've been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. I'm sorry about that. But I have some good news for you. You see, there are no tangles in your brain. I don't even know what a tangle is. And he said, see, he shows it to me. And both Susan and I look at it. Okay, if you say so. But then he grabs the film, stands up, and he starts to leave. Whoa, Dr. Howard, wait. What's going on? What's wrong with me? What's my prognosis? What's my treatment plan? What road am I on? He stops short, turns around. Sam, there's only one road for you, and it's down. You're just going to get worse. Here, tell you what. Let me give you a prescription for Aricept. And he hands me a prescription, which I later learned you don't give until end stage Alzheimer's. Oh, and he tells me that, he says, there is a memory at the University Memory Center in downtown, and you might want to be in touch with them to see if you qualify for a drug trial. Now, I have another patient, and I have to get there, and he walks out. Susan and I sit there silent. It's like some sort of infinite cone of something that encompasses us. We're left to find our way to the front desk on our own. We get lost. It's only one person in the front desk, and looks down and says, no, Dr. Howard has not left any instructions for you. The office will be in touch if he wants to see you again. Yeah, there is one thing, one thing that Susan and I know for sure. We want a new doctor, and we want another opinion. And that's really not easy these days, but it turns out that a couple at our gym, we know them, that her husband had a memory problem, and we asked them, and they recommend a neurologist. Turns out he's a well-known neurologist and has an office just around the corner from where our house is. And so we call, we can use their name, and it works. We get an appointment for again a few weeks later, and it takes a while, but we get in and come in, totally different circumstance. Go through some basic repeat of the test to confirm from their end. We're in the exam room. He comes in right away. He has a piece of paper in his hand. He says, well, yes, I've reviewed your medical file and I agree with the MCI, or mild cognitive impairment diagnosis. What we need, Susan and Sam, we need to get to the bottom of why. Yes. Why am I mildly cognitively impaired? But then he tells us that means finding a way for us to get one of these PET scans with contrast. Now, actually, I had heard about those with Dr. Howard, but they sort of wrote it off because they're very expensive. So PET scan with contrast costs about $10,000, and they're not covered by insurance. And there's some folks who seem to think it doesn't matter if you're going downhill, right? Well, Dr. Banks actually has an association with the University Memory Clinic. He says, I have an idea. Let me introduce you to the University Memory Center and get you an appointment to see if you can qualify for one of their drug trials. And if you do, you can get the scan and the drug company will pay for it. And he delivers. And again, 3 months to get in. Then they go through another series of tests. Now, the good news is we have 3, yes, I said 3 opinions confirming that I have mild cognitive impairment. And it does take a little while longer for them to find a test that I might qualify for, but that means I get the scan. Of course, the results get sent to Dr. Banks, and Susan and I once again go, and it's a regular appointment to Dr. Banks. We walk into his office, and he seems more reserved. He's looking down at a folder with a piece of paper in it. And he says, I think we're at a new diagnosis. And then he mumbles, early stage Alzheimer's. And then he sort of like reviews the files. He gives me galantamine, which is an early memory booster. And tells me, your medications seem fine right now, Sam, but let's see you every 3 months now instead of every 6 months. Susan and I glance at each other as he's wrapping up the session. I'm not quite sure what to make of the moment, and he doesn't go into any real detail. He does tell us it takes about 5 to 10 years before you really start getting worse. And today, 2023, I'm about 5 years out from my initial mild cognitive impairment diagnosis. And we've learned a lot more about Alzheimer's disease. And I'm beginning to sense things are getting worse. So now we have to figure out what are my choices. This decline is raising the stakes for us. Now, one choice is Switzerland. It's called accompanied suicide. And I will need to decide very soon You see, in order to qualify to kill yourself, you have to be able to give informed consent. And to do that, you have to be competent, mentally competent. And I know things can change suddenly. So if I want to do that, we need to get to it before it's too late. I wonder, though, if I had the guts to just hang on for a while, and then when I sense things getting really bad, could add a couple more years. I could just get in the car, drive down to Chain Bridge and jump off into the Potomac, kill myself, save all that money and add a few years to my life if I had the guts. Or maybe there's a different choice. Maybe I should stick around and figure out how to live a meaningful life as a deeply forgetful and confused person. Maybe I can cause trouble and advocate for a world that can accommodate me as I will be. I've been a troublemaker all my life. In 1970, I went to work for Ralph Nader. Yes, I was a Nader's Raider, and yes, it's that Ralph Nader. Some of you may not remember who he was. And boy, did we cause trouble. Made him put airbags and seat belts in cars and change how we think about it. So products have to be designed safely as used, not blame the consumer. Yeah, we caused trouble. I also was an advocate for disability rights. I served on the board of the World Institute on Disability. And we advocated for people to live independently, even with the worst disabilities. And my friend, Professor Frank Bowe, who is deaf, because of him, we have sign interpreters at most public events today. We have captioning on television, even on Zoom. Some of you may be using it. And then there was my friend Deborah. She was in a wheelchair. And finally can get on a friggin' airplane because the airlines have to store her wheelchair. I remember her telling me that people were astounded at first because they said they never saw anybody in wheelchairs in airports, much less on sidewalks. So maybe I can stay around and cause enough trouble to get the world to adapt for me as I will be. What if we had CN, cognitive navigators, and have CNs as available to us as deeply impaired people to help us navigate the little and big things in life, and as available as curb cuts are for people in wheelchairs. Sound crazy? Do you know what else sounded crazy at one time? Creating 50 million or more, replacing every sidewalk in America with a curb cut. So people in wheelchairs could go outside, and incidentally, people with baby carriages could get around, and these UPS and FedEx delivery guys could take their dollies right to their delivery points. That sounded crazy at one time as well. All right. Yes, I'm worried. I know this mind stuff, it's different than wheelchairs. I do know that. How do you accommodate a man who simply stares into the universe or lives in an entirely different universe than we do? How do you do that? And what about the other changes in me? Agitation, for example. Recently, Susan insisted that we talk to a social worker about my growing agitation over the little things in life. Now, we did it by Zoom. And Susan and I were sitting together. She's sitting next to me. There's the Zoom and the social worker. And Susan tells the social worker, with me sitting right next to me, but she next to her, looking at the screen at the social worker, she tells the social worker that I'm scaring her. That there were moments when Susan is afraid that I might hurt her. I was shocked. I mean, shocked. I would never hurt Susan. At least not intentionally. And I don't want to create the circumstances where it might happen inadvertently. So now, yes, now I imagine sitting in that chair in Switzerland, ready to drink this cup of poison. Susan sitting right next to me. Maybe doing that to Susan is as wrong as if I hit her. And would her pain be even greater? So I'm thinking maybe Susan is right all along. Maybe we should just get up and go back home. And with the love and support of family and our children and Susan and maybe even people like you, that there will be a few more troublemaking years left in me and all of us deeply impaired people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Sam's going to join us in a moment and moving to a different camera. Very moving piece. And I'll take this moment also to introduce our talkback guest, Melinda Buckley. Melinda performed excerpts of her show Mother and Me on Solar Arts Heal in 2021 and an encore performance featured this last February. Hers is the story of a larger-than-life Hungarian Mama Rose who slowly waltzes into dementia as her Broadway baby Melinda shimmies into middle age. It's an outrageous one-woman show about stepping up and into your own light. Melinda has appeared on Broadway and in national tours of several shows, including Crazy for You, A Chorus Line, Bob Fosse's revival of Sweet Charity. She performs sketch material, has worked as a stand-up, has written several solo shows, and directed Town Hall's hit musical series Broadway by the Year, has worked on several films for the big screen. And so we're so happy to have you with us. Thank you for joining us, Melinda.
Oh, what an honor. It was an honor. Sam, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. It was just so powerful and so moving and poignant and funny. Bravo, just bravo.
Bravo. It was a beautiful performance. And I see Susan, your wife, is here with you. So nice to see you, Susan.
Hi.
Yes, Sam and Susan.
Sam and Susan. Well, you're quite the couple. And I'm very, very moved by the things you disclosed too. What was that? It must have been a horrific moment for you to hear that Susan had some fear because of anger or feelings that were coming up in you.
Well, not only, first of all, yes, it was. And, I'm not, see, these can be confusing times.
Mm.
And it's hard to distinguish sometimes between disease and just frustration sometimes. And, she can speak to it, but there's clearly times where I get really frustrated and I can push her away from the computer behind. She's asking for a little help, or I don't mean to do it, but I look back at it and I'm embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
Myself. I mean, not to the world. If the world saw it, I'd be even more embarrassed. But no, but it happened. So it shows that, it was a profound moment to understand that she couldn't say it to me.
Right.
She had to tell it to somebody else, which, by the way, for anybody who's online and who listens to this, the value in talking to a third person.
Right.
That
Absolutely.
people, to me, it was like, I'd heard, you can read about it, the theory about that. Here it was real life.
Mm-hmm.
I got it at the same time. She couldn't say it to me. She was
Right.
afraid. But she
Yeah.
could say it with me right next to her because there was somebody, a safe, even on Zoom, it was a safe space
Right.
to make that statement, right? I mean,
Right.
Well, it's important, such an important thing to address. As I understand it, Alzheimer's affects many parts of the brain, usually starting in the hippocampus, the area that's associated with current experiences, but and it's the part of the brain that creates long-term memories, but the disease progresses often to the areas of the brain, the amygdala, that involved in processing emotions. And people with Alzheimer's do get emotionally labile, they become upset over circumstances out of proportion to the actual event. I imagine I would feel that way just in the confusion of it.
I know that, like, with it was so interesting, Sam. And I think that's what's so valuable about what you're doing is giving us that inside perspective, because I was a caretaker, for my mom. And, of course, I was the kind of person that did seek out people like Teepa and different, Teepa Snow is an expert in this field. And she was particularly good about helping me understand some of the changes that were going on, because, I can really appreciate Sue's perspective, because you're on the outside, you don't quite, it doesn't quite make sense, what's happening, like the little changes and the fact that, as it was explained to me, my mom didn't have the ability to calm herself down anymore. Like, she had lost that ability. I think it's also different for every single person. So I don't want to speak for what, for your experience, but.
I'm fortunate. I do want to I think it's worth mentioning that Susan worked for 14 years at an assisted living center with a memory center.
Oh, wow.
She worked in that environment, but her role was admissions director and marketing, but she also learned a lot. And funny, because theater and Teepa, I know, says the same thing. Yes, anding.
Yes.
And so this is an improv for the people listening technique.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see it so often happening the other way, where someone tries to tell you you're wrong, no, do it this way, no. And just like in the improv scene, whatever the person says, and we've seen or you say yes. But your yes is and have guide the moment.
Right.
I don't know if you saw we saw the video where somebody was bamming things on furniture, and Tebow walks up, says this woman happened to have been a cleaning person. So this banging thing that bothered everybody was this woman thinking she was cleaning. So rather than say, stop that,
Right.
and she said, let me help you finish cleaning. And moved and changed the situation. So
Right.
she said yes, and moved it to fix the situation.
Right.
Good in life. Anyway, I'm a big advocate for yes anding, and in regular life, and did it in
Right.
but it works in the same. It can be helpful. There are challenges on both sides, and what I think the biggest challenge, or the thing I'm trying to show, and the hardest time, is in the earlier moments.
Right.
Because I thought I was a smart guy and knew, but I didn't know what to expect. I don't think we had any idea. I mean, people have say they have this and that, but going through this system, which is badly broken.
Yes.
I believe it is. I think the neurology and diagnosis system for cognitive issues is terribly broken, because I have learned that our experience with Dr. Howard is not unusual. If not, it is typical.
Yeah.
And the tragedy narrative that, in essence, says it's not worth fixing.
Right.
There's no way out. You're going to die. It's just going to get worse.
Right.
And we can't. First of all, the one thing I've learned, yes, and people will hear me like this in this conversation. Oh, yeah, you just don't live with us. You don't know but it's different for everybody. And slow down, the moment. I don't even know if it's worth doing this, but like yesterday, I just had cataract operation. We're driving to the place, and there's a moment where I said, where are we going? I'm in the car, I'm driving. She's next to me. Where are we going? I mean, it just disappears.
Right.
And and I won't tell them about the fact that we knocked down the mailboxes.
Oh, no. Oh, Sam, you've got a humor in you, and I think you too, thank goodness, because it's something that you both are facing together.
But I think my point here, though, is I hate the word, by the way, and I don't like. I'm going to have a longer conversation about not using the D word. That's why you heard me use neurocognitive disability.
I wanted to say that I know you hate that term dementia, and we should correct that. Tell us what the proper term is.
Well, the actually legal, in quotes, the medical term is neurocognitive disability or neurocognitive disorder. I didn't know that until I got into this, that they call it DSM-5, the medical coding thing. In 2013, eliminated this word, the dirty word, dementia. It's now called neurocognitive disorders and neurocognitive disabilities.
Wow.
And there's many different types of neurocognitive disorders, I understand. So and symptoms are often mild at first and go on to create problems with memory, thinking, problem solving, and changes in emotions, like we've already talked about. But Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of progressive neurocognitive disorder. Is that right?
I don't know that for a fact, to be honest with you. I don't know that. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I've always heard that, like, it's Alzheimer's is kind of a catch-all. That there are like 80 different kinds of disorders, and the more they find out, that
I don't know if it's 80, and you're right that I had never heard of Lewy body, but we now know people with it, and it's different and it progresses different.
Right.
Frontal mobile, you mentioned that. And
Yeah, it starts usually, that I want to note that our producer Brianna is going to be posting some links that you offered, both Sam and Melinda, and very grateful for that for people watching, so that there's good resources to be able to look at. And also, I want to note something that I read is, depending on the cause, some dementia symptoms might be reversible, and one should see a doctor if you or a loved one has a memory problem or a dementia symptom. Some treatable medical conditions can cause dementia symptoms, and they talk about diet and exercise and things you can do in early onset, and to get the right diagnosis, as you did, right, Sam? I mean,
yes, but we didn't. I haven't talked about it. Of course, as you're learning about it and realizing that, you run to where, Google, and you start Googling things. Have to be very careful. There are so many quacks and crazy things, and even some of the leading
neurologist, the book we bought to
read,
and he had all these things in it about diet and exercise.
And then you learn he has his clinic and he wants you to come to his clinic.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really hard, and people can be very vulnerable if they don't have these great partners or daughters or people to help, and it is difficult. And people, there's a resistance to finding out why. I'm again finding that meeting, and as I'm delving deeper into this world, a lot of people say, I don't want to know what difference does it make.
Right.
And Gail basically said there are some, I'm hesitate to say cures, but there are treatments. There are two things. There are treatments that can slow, and medicines to slow down the decline. There are drug trials. I am in a drug trial, and the drug trial I've learned is perfect for exact my condition. The pill may just add something, but to say I don't want to know, you could be helped, and people are ashamed. This is like the C word.
Yes.
Ashamed of what it is, or afraid they'll be fired if they're still working. I've seen all of that. And I don't hesitate. Sometimes I think I'm being too loud about it. But
I don't want to.
I mean, that moment in your show when you're talking about the driving, that moment, and then the moment of the liquid black wall. My mom, she knew something was wrong, and she just wouldn't say, she was in such denial about it. And, you see that so often, and people don't want to talk about it. And this, I think, is the great gift of your show is, we need to have these conversations. And, that's why
And it's not their fault. It's not our fault. It's so interesting because it's the mind. You get people, I think, who blame themselves.
Right.
And they're saying, as opposed to, my other books is about Susan's breast cancer. Nobody, why did you,
Yes.
you didn't do that. No, it's not exactly parallel, but I think maybe the idea of the cognitive navigator, which I love now, they're being breast navigators.
Right.
They're there to help somebody with breast cancer navigate their treatment world.
Right. Yeah. And I saw that she just posted, it's like, I do have another friend who's living with the disease, who's very similar to you. And I hope one time you can meet him. Because he's the same way. He feels like this purpose in connecting people and talking about it and being that navigator, like, helping. Because like you said, it's like you go to a doctor and they don't tell you anything. And then you have to find, maybe a support group or a.
There are a couple of things in America today. One, by the way, is called Dementia Friendly Movement.
Yes.
It's from Britain, by the way. Now there's Dementia Friendly America.
Right.
And
I don't think did we have that one in the chat? Let's put it in. That's good.
I think there's one there, but
Okay.
they're sort of licensed into different organizations in every community. So Susan and I go every Friday by Zoom to Dementia Friendly Nevada. We live in Northern Virginia. That's because the place that claimed the name here locally is just using it for marketing purposes. Come to our place and put your loved one in our.
Yes.
Whereas this Dementia Friendly Nevada is supported by the Cleveland Clinic, and they've got wonderful people there. And in fact, I'm somehow already on an advisory committee for a book that they're putting out for newly diagnosed families. And
Wow.
it's going to be released, I think at the end of July. They'll have copies of it, which is, there was nothing for us. It was
Right.
Well, the Alzheimer's Association does have support groups, but more so for the caregivers than them.
Right. Yes.
Where this group includes both.
Right.
And there's a lot of benefit in it because there are people that ask him on these Fridays, what do you think? Or how do you this, that? And it has helped them because then they can identify what's going on in their household if they haven't noticed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say too, I wasn't trying to give false hope to people about Alzheimer's, and dementia often, which is progressive. It's very progressive. But I was looking at information through the Mayo Clinic and looking at cognitive changes and psychological changes. And I think the point being that I would emphasize is that if you are experiencing any of these symptoms, see a doctor, get tested.
Yes, but that more than anything, I think that's what we're talking about. So there are multiple reasons, but there are two sides of it: for yourself and then for the future. So I'm in a drug trial.
Yep.
And I would encourage, and if getting in these trials may or may not help me, but it'll help.
Right.
And you would
Yeah.
hope. So, there is a genetic, in Alzheimer's, there is a genetic propensity, and it's called the gene, you may know, it's called APOE.
Yeah.
And there is, I think, 2, 3, and 4, the APOE4 version of it.
So one may be tested for that gene.
Yeah, everybody with APOE4 everybody with Alzheimer's has a 4, but not everybody with 4 gets Alzheimer's. And it turns out I have one instance of that. I didn't know that. I knew I got it from my 23andMe. It was in my filing and said, you may be slightly more at risk for Alzheimer's. When I did that, it just didn't pay attention.
Sure. How long did you know that for your mother, Melinda? Is this a newer?
It was sort of newer. It was after her diagnosis. So I never did it. And I haven't done it. I think, it would be probably beneficial for me to know, because I had, my dad had some sort of vascular dementia towards the very end. And then of course my mom, now they had very, that generation, my mom was from Europe, she smoked and, had a very unhealthy lifestyle that, that's part of it. I was talking to my friend at the Alzheimer's Family Center, and she was saying there's research now that like 30 to 40% of the Alzheimer's or, I don't want to use the D word, but is actually preventable. And they are more and more research coming out that like in your 40s and 50s, finding out that that's when it's starting, but it's just not manifesting. But there's a Dr. Tanzi, I think he's from clinic in Boston. I don't know if you know Dr. Tanzi, but he has this thing called SHIELD, and it's an acronym. So S is for sleep, H is for handling stress, I is for interaction, staying social, because loneliness is actually part of it. Exercise and learning new things, and diet. That there's a big connection between the gut and the brain. That so it's this is the challenge with this. The brain it's such a complex.
The human body is. The human
Yes.
body. I have all sorts of theories. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, on the west side of El Paso, and right, maybe 3 miles away was a copper smelter. And they had these smokestacks, and if the wind blew east,
Wow.
you stood outside, your nose and throat would sting. Occasionally the city would call for stay-at-home days for the west side.
Wow.
And I've tried to get the Texas Department of Public Health or somebody to do a study, and just to find out whether there are more frequencies now later, all these years later, of people with cognitive disorders. So there's a lot of stuff that happens. It's
Right.
it's hard to know, but getting to know I think people should know they have a genetic propensity.
Right.
I think I found the family strain. So my father's mother, which has a different last name, was blonder. We run into that family, and there is very frequent Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And some of the people there have been tested, and they also have the gene. So I have got one. You can have up to 2 different ones.
Susan, have you been tested? Has Susan been tested too?
No, but remember, she's not part of my family.
Oh, I know. I'm just wondering if within the family that you're.
No, we did, but I did the early on when you did the what was the test that you found out that you had the gene?
The 23andMe.
Yeah, and it didn't indicate anything.
Yeah. Oh, you had, and then also she was tested for the BRCA gene, but she doesn't have that either.
Wow. Oh, wow.
But it's worth knowing because there are things to do in lifestyle. Maybe it was inevitable with me. I was a heavy smoker. I grew up in a household where both my parents were chain smokers.
Yeah.
And,
Yep, all our parents smoked.
All of our parents. I mean, that was,
Mhm.
then
you go to the doctor would be smoking,
But I was able to eventually stop it. It's a whole story, but because I had what we call migraines, what they call cluster vascular headaches.
Oh.
Anybody knows what cluster
But that was
vascular?
part of up here in your brain.
No, it was cluster
Is that the one where you see the visual?
No,
Oh.
cluster vascular headaches are a subset of migraines that occur mainly in men.
Oh.
And imagine if you were to be an ironing person and you heat the iron up and you put water on it to make sure how hot it is. And
Right.
you finally get up and imagine that hot thing being put up against the inside of your brain for about 15 seconds, then taken away, put back, taken away.
Oh.
And then that recycles over a 24 or 48.
Oh my gosh.
Cluster. It feels like a hot iron, Actually, gave me a report once that said, talked about it and said that the high rate of suicides. With it. But
Wow.
You had to stop smoking. That's the only thing that got him to
the
stop.
doctor said, well, they were trying medications to help him.
Wow.
This next medication can generate lung tumors and stuff, and I'm not going to give it to you until you stop smoking.
Wow.
Wow, well, that's
Even
really
then,
important information.
By the way, even then, it was hard to stop smoking.
I'll bet. I'll bet. Well, a lifetime.
Sure. This is such an important conversation. I'm glad we have so many wonderful links that we can share with people. We just have a few minutes left. Is there any other, and I wanted to also say, I really appreciate what you talked about earlier in terms of the, both the anger issues, the patience that we need as caregivers, and this is a valuable conversation for us all, and also about validating the reality sometimes of someone that has a cognitive disability. Is it worth trying to pull them back into reality? And from what I was reading, it depending on the stage that you're in, no, maybe not. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Susan might from working in the community a bit more. Reality is an odd term, right? Because they live in a reality. It's just different. So you want to,
is it cruel to tell somebody back in reality, no, that isn't really happening, or is it better just to go along with it? I guess it would depend on the situation. Of course.
It was always better to go along with the situation, because that's where they were. And you have to meet them where they are at that time. And there will be a period of time that he may think I'm someone else throughout the process. And you go with it. There were lots of people that, especially men, that they were in a place where they were all day with other women, and they would find a woman that was very similar to their wife. And had incidents when wives would come to visit, the wives then began to learn to joke about it. I'm the real life, you're his wife now. By saying you're his wife now, he could remain in the reality. So we had little tricks like that come about. And who knows, you because you just don't know. But it's better to keep them where they are, and at least they're having some sort of conversation. Otherwise, if you start to bring them back into reality, it's not going to do any good. It's just going to create more and more agitation.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Susan. And do you have any closing comments, Sam?
Well, this is a work in progress, and the full play has been written much different. It's because it's much longer, and I
premiere in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol Fringe in July.
If you're in New York, just settled May 6th. There'll be a work in progress presentation.
Oh, great.
My artistic home in New York, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. For almost a decade, worked part-time in New York at a social justice group. And my artistic home is an A&D theater company, are called Artistic New Directions. And they'll host a work in progress. So I'll still be partially on script, but I better be off by July.
Right.
I say,
let me know. I'd love to come.
I do want to say the script is a prop. I don't want to use it as much as I did today, but I'm not gonna. It's a prop. You don't go on stage with Alzheimer's, not on stage.
I think it's a great idea. It really does kind of drive the point right from the outset.
Right.
You know, and we all need a script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all need it.
Melinda, do you have
That's
any
great.
other comments that you might like to make?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, just, I would love to know when that presentation will be in New York, Sam. And-
It's Ripley Greer.
Oh, great.
you-
I'll get the
Maybe-
information. I'll get it from you, you know, offline. No, I just think I think it's absolutely wonderful, and you're so engaging and present and wonderful in this. I know that I loved hearing about like your past and your Raider, you know, the Raiders. No, I'm sorry, Raiders, and you know that I think, you know, that really plays into it and really touches on the purpose with this work. So anyway, I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful to you both for the solo shows that you do in regard to this, but Sam, I'm very grateful that you came to perform tonight and for us to have this discussion. It's a very important discussion for all of us as we age, and we all have, you know, parents and other loved ones who have these cognitive abilities or disabilities, and it's really helpful to have some resources to know how to
Yes, we
address.
have to be ready.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to Solo Art Seal. Thank you, Gail. And
Yes, thank you, Gail.
to the
You're
mo-
welcome. And a very special thank you to you, Sam Simon and Susan Simon, and Melinda Buckley for your inspiring work. Your people, please look them up on their websites. You can see, and you'll find out about this and other shows on the Marshstream YouTube platform at themarsh.org. I do want to announce next week, or not next week, we're doing Solo Art Seal now every other week. Ann Can does once a month. They're fantastic shows. They just celebrated their second year anniversary with us.
Wow.
And our next Solo Art Seal show will be April 25th with Ann Can and with host Rick Davis. And next month, we present our first matinee, May 10th, live at 2 p.m. And because it's going to be with Sarah Nesson in the Broken Mishkan, which is the Hebrew word for sacred space. It's a performance piece that follows Sarah's journey toward wholeness after being diagnosed with a chronic illness, with chronic fatigue. She needs to do an afternoon show, and we're here for her and really happy she'll be able to join us in May. So I just want to say with thanks again, Sam Simon, Melinda Buckley, Susan, our Marshstream producer, Brianna Caver, artistic director, Stephanie Weisman, and the Marsh marketing team always. And to our Zoom and YouTube audiences, thanks so much for joining us. We're all in this together. See you
Yes.
next time.